What's up, friends? Welcome back to Rooted Wisconsin, where we authentically share the stories of the people who drive Wisconsin culture and make this a fantastic place to be. Kick off our episode the same way we do every single one, by thanking you. Thank you for your likes, shares, subscribes. Thank you for engaging with our content, and thank you for being there. We appreciate you. We make the content for you, have the conversations for you, and hope you find as much value and enjoyment as we do. So thanks for being there. Of course, a big shout out, thank you to our sponsors at Riverside Pizzeria in Ashwaubenon, of course, the original up in the UP, and probably coming to a neighborhood near you sometime soon. So keep an eye out for that famous Riverside Square cut, and get cheese out in those pepperoncinis, and you'll be living solid. So big shout out to Ryan and his crew. We've been saying it from the beginning, but it means a lot for him to take a chance on us and a swing at what we're doing here, and we appreciate him being out there. So stop in next time you're in Ashwaubenon and grab yourself a pizza, and thanks to the folks at Discover Green Bay for the studio space. That out of the way, let's get our next episode started. Excited to welcome our next guest today, Pat Cavanaugh. Thanks for coming in, Pat.
Brad, thanks for having me in. Appreciate it. And just really thrilled to have this conversation in a great venue like Discover Green Bay is.
It's aesthetic, isn't it? It feels nice walking in.
Yeah, I was sharing with you earlier, I had the great privilege, honor to be on the board for Discover Green Bay, and I just think Brad and his team do a wonderful job, and just such a key part of our community and the greater Green Bay area, and just the entire state of Wisconsin. And obviously there's plenty that they have going on with the draft in April, yeah. Which, if in case you don't know, that's on the horizon here. But just a lot of respect for Discover Green Bay and who they are and what they stand for the community.
Yeah, I think that's why they let me use the studio, because it's Brad and Brad. I think he sees the relation there and just lets me have the space. But yeah, for sure. Similar mission. I mean, when I thought of starting Rooted Wisconsin, I wanted to shine a spotlight on everything that's great here. And that's their gig too. They're trying to show people that. And I truly believe that every day, that we live in one of the best places in the world, man. And I like shining a spotlight on it. So I'm glad they do too.
Absolutely. Well, I'll tell you, being from Detroit, Michigan,
yeah.
We moved here 5 years ago as a family of 4 kids. And
yeah.
There's just so many great things about Northeast Wisconsin and the greater Green Bay area, and it's just a level of kindness that this community has, and I think I'm reminded of that on a daily basis. And so when people talk a lot about my experience here, it comes back to the people, and there's just a high level of character and care for the community that is just embodied in everything that I see, and it's just a great place to be and raise a family.
Absolutely, man. Yeah, probably in alignment with that. One of the newer folks here, he's from a Michigan transplant too, and he's a Lions fan.
Shane, yes, I'm fully aware of that. But yeah, doesn't take long for a Lions fan to become a Packer fan, especially when you're working directly kind of with the Packers.
He was wearing a Packers hat today. I hawked him. He went walking by the studio space, and I looked out the window and I saw the Packer hat go by, and it was Shane under it. Immediately, I walked out there. I said, "Dude." Yep. He said in 2 weeks it'll change.
Oh yeah,
we're recording this in a couple weeks. They play the Lions, but
Lions are coming to town in a couple of weeks. Yeah, which should be a really big football game for sure.
Huge, yeah. Well, you kind of brought up where I wanted to start there today. 5 years you've been in there. I was trying to remember how long ago it was when I met you. You hadn't been here too long. It was probably 4 years ago at that time, I was thinking. And what I remembered from our conversation, I love talking about people's journeys following their passion. And from what I got to know about you that day and what I've seen transpire since from afar, being connected on LinkedIn and stuff, it seems like you're no stranger to that. So I want to dive into that a little bit. Let's start before the transition to Green Bay, though. You spent several years as principals in a couple different districts, right?
That's correct. Yeah. So starting out as really in college, I wanted to be a teacher and I wanted to be a coach. And the main reason for that is I was really fortunate to grow up in a family where I had 4 older brothers and just 2 really caring, loving parents. And so I was fortunate to be in an environment where at an early age, I was inspired and led in a way to do great for others. And that really kind of propelled me to pursue the path of education. And in large part because I had a lot of great influences in my home and then outside my home when it came to teachers and coaches. And so went to college at a smaller school, Saginaw Valley State, which is in mid-Michigan, and went to school to be an elementary school teacher and wanted to coach as well. And Shortly after my experience there, I had played some college football, moved out to upstate New York, where I coached 2 years of college football. And then while doing that, I also went to grad school, got my master's in teaching and curriculum. Loved that experience of coaching and getting my grad work, but had a calling to go back to Michigan and get married and start teaching. So I did that for a couple years. And then shortly into my experience as a teacher, I had a really unique opportunity to become an administrator. And so I worked in a town called Warren, which is a neighboring city of Detroit, and spent a couple of years as an assistant principal, and then transitioned into the elementary principal role, which was a fascinating experience, and just truly loved that experience. You have young kids at the tender age of 4 or 5 coming into school for the very first time, and so many of them, it's first-time parents as well. So those who are listening, you know what it's like when you're sending your child off to kindergarten for the very first time. It's a really precious moment, and it was just a great feeling to be the ones who are entrusted to take care of kids. And so I did that for 7 years, and then had the opportunity to be a middle school principal in another district in Walled Lake. And throughout that time, I just had a great experience and a love for leadership. And so that kind of led me to also go back to school to get a couple more degrees. I'm certainly not any smarter, Brad. I just have a little more debt.
I say the same thing.
But it's just a great experience just to continue that opportunity to learn. And then, about 5 years ago, a really unique opportunity came knocking at my door to move out to Green Bay, Wisconsin, and join the PAC organization, which is something that was very off script of the path that I was leading. So
yeah. So the first jump there, I want to talk about a little bit. A member of my extended family is a principal, and we don't get a chance to catch up as much as we used to. But the last time I saw him, I kind of, I'm interested about jobs and how everything's going. And I just asked him like how the gig was. He's been a principal for a long time now. And one thing it seemed that I took from our conversation, he enjoys every day of it. But one thing, it had to be different switching from an educator to the administrative role. What was that like for you? Was it what you expected? Like how many years did you teach before you became an administrator?
Yeah, so I taught 2 years.
2, okay.
Yeah, so I taught 5th grade for a year and then taught middle school language arts. And the interesting thing about that is the district I joined for my first position, I got hired in a moment where there was a lot of teachers that were at the top of the pay scale, and so they were retiring out. So I was a part of a large influx of new teachers, about 150. And so what happened my first 2 years is I actually got bumped into different schools because of where I was in seniority. And so from an education standpoint, that happens based on where you're at with seniority. Your rights could be shifted as far as where you work. And interestingly enough, after my second year, I got called to the principal's office, and I was told that I didn't have a job because there were some budget cuts. But the principal said, "But Pat, I have another idea for you. There's a school in the district that has an assistant principal opening." And he said, "I think you need to apply." And I wasn't familiar with the school, but he said, "I think
you hadn't even thought about it up till that point." Okay.
No. And so he had encouraged me to apply. I didn't even know where the school was. I mean, it's a big district, 15,000 students, not quite the scale of Greater Green Bay schools or Green Bay public schools, but pretty large, 1,000 teachers, 15,000 kids. So, but it was that conversation that really triggered me to open up my eyes to what an opportunity this could be, to have a greater influence than the 150 students I had on my day-to-day caseload with as being a middle school teacher. The school I was looking to interview at was about 900 kids. But in addition to that, it took somebody else, like my principal, to transfer the belief onto me. And that's something we actually talk about a lot in my current role is the transfer of belief onto others. And that sometimes people aren't quite aware of what their influence or their ability could be until someone else believes in them. And that's what it took for my principal at the time, Doug, to do. And so only 2 years teaching, quickly got in administration, and just from there took off. And so to get to your question, what really was great about it is I had the opportunity to lead in a different way. Like I said, I had 150 students before. Now I had the great opportunity to have 900 students, but also had the great opportunity and the privilege to work with so many teachers. And any good leader realizes they can learn a lot from their staff.
Oh, yeah.
And that was one of the things I picked up right away is I learned as much about myself from them as I did just through the experience of being a principal. And so fully indebted to the support and the guidance that all those teachers that gave me throughout those first couple of years, because I learned a lot on the fly, and just had great other leaders that I could rely on that were also administrators. So
yeah, that's an awesome topic, man. The transfer of belief. I've never quite thought about it like that, but when I shifted my career trajectory from broadcasting into education, I always, like, the way I put it is I came to the realization of like the power the words that I use have. And that gave me a lot of satisfaction, man. That, and when I think about it, it's that concept you're talking about, the transfer of belief. Like, you can do this. Like, you can really do whatever you want if you do these things and believe in yourself. That's an interesting way to put it, man. But I've heard that that overall kind of outlook on it is that's how the people who do it the best look at that job. It's like, okay, so I don't impact directly my 150 students anymore, or whatever it is, but I get the opportunity to impact this many on a little bit different level, or impact those that impact them.
Yep.
That's a fascinating way to think about that, man. So principal for, what'd you say, 9
12 years.
12 years.
Yep.
Okay.
So 7 at the elementary and then 5 at the middle school level.
Okay. Gotcha. So then probably the one that we'll spend a little bit more time on is what leads to coming in director of sales for the Packers? Is that what it was?
Yeah. So
Okay.
I was fortunate to oversee our events department. So it was in events and hospitality. And so what that looks like on an annual basis is 1,000 events a year that we held at Lambeau Field.
Wild to think
and some
about.
event spaces in Titletown. Yeah. So just a really unique opportunity. And that phone call that came about really opened my eyes. Like I said, I was living a pretty scripted life. I went to school to be a teacher, became an administrator. I was pursuing being a superintendent, had gone through all the training. I'd gone back to get some advanced degrees, was encouraged to pursue being a superintendent. And then this phone call happened, and it really led me to kind of think about where I was as a husband, as a father, and where we were as a family. And I thought, you know what? This is a really unique opportunity to take a risk. And if it doesn't go well, that's okay, because it was an opportunity, and that's life. There's never been a regret, though, after making the decision. And so had the great fortune of moving out to Green Bay. I live in De Pere now, and spent 5 years with the Green Bay Packers, and just learned an incredible amount about what it means to be a part of an organization, a business like the Packers.
How does that phone call come about, though? Like, what?
Yeah.
How does that jump even happen?
Yeah.
you know?
So you talk about relationships and how important those are.
Yeah.
That phone call came from someone I have known for 30 plus years. So it was a friend of mine that I went to grade school, went to high school with. He'd known me for a long time, and he had talked to me about the position. And what I really appreciated is when I did come out and interview, he stepped away. And I had the fortune of interviewing with his boss and the VP of HR, and so he kind of stepped back to ensure that he was following that process, and fortunately was able to get the job. And what I'll tell you, Brad, is what I quickly found out is, and you'll appreciate this being someone who's in education, in teaching, but also has a lot of experience in marketing. There wasn't as much difference as I thought there would be.
Never is.
Between being in education and being in hospitality and in sales. Because it really all comes back to people. And it comes back to building relationships, being vulnerable at the right times, building trust. And so that was one thing that I found quickly was really enjoyable about the job, is I could be my authentic self and do the best I could to support the brand of the Packers. And so, when you think about the parallels of teaching and sales, there's a lot of similarities, and just the amount of experience I had working in a classroom. And often there were students that didn't want to learn what we were selling in class. And you really had to motivate them on A, why it's important, and B, what it could do to help them, down the road. And so a lot of it was self-discovery for the students, similarly to the role I had with the Packers. And ultimately, it was just a great opportunity to be a part of a company, a nonprofit, a social group's experience. And so what I did with the Packers was hopefully add a level of value to the guests that came to the Packers. And like I said, we were fortunate to have about 500 events annually for outside groups, so companies, businesses, nonprofit groups, education groups, and then another 500 events that we held internally. So any type of event that we had, whether it was our board of directors, when our president held an event, just community outreach, we had a lot of internal events, and to the tune of about 1,000 a year. So just a great experience, and like I said, had a great fortune of learning from a lot of good leaders that were all about the community and all about the Packers. So it was great.
Yeah. Well, and the parallels, like you talk about you were able to be your authentic self in that role. The reason that your friend made that phone call is because he knew your authentic self would fit in that role. It's kind of that transfer of belief thing too. Then like that, you're so dead on about how, effective leadership happens in the same framework every time. You build the trust and show your authentic self, and then try to impose that transfer of belief you're talking about. So even thinking as a principal, leading a room of 100 teachers or something like that, you move into this role, you're leading 100 people trying to achieve a different task, but your task isn't all that much different. It's very similar, right?
It is. And I'll tell you, what's interesting is when I came on as a principal, there was a lot I had to get up to speed on. Oh. And I had to be very honest and vulnerable with my staff to let them know that I didn't have all the answers, and that I was going to be learning a lot from them. And that was something that I think also helped me when I joined the Packers. I leaned on a lot of other folks that had been in the role or been in the organization longer than me. And, there's a term we use a lot in our current company, and that's the smartest person in the room is the room. And that's something that we really try to embody as an organization, and that also I try to embody as a leader, whether it was in the schools or whether it was with the Packers, that it's not about who's right, it's about doing what's right, and we need to rely on each other oftentimes. And so, like I said, being vulnerable to know that I didn't have all the answers, especially early on in my various careers, and just relying on the people around me to help put us all in a position to be successful is really what it came about to be. And just grateful for those experiences. I'm still learning along the way, and I think it takes leadership to realize that you don't have all the answers. And I think people who are part of organizations appreciate that. You still have to have a level of credibility and ability to get things done. But to me, the best leaders are the ones who rely on their team and empower their team to help support the mission and help to support each other.
Yeah, no doubt. And even when you're really proficient at something, that can lead to so many blind spots that you don't see if you don't allow that stuff in. And we've all come across that, really, really proficient people at a task that maybe aren't so effective as leaders because of that scenario, Absolutely.
And the blind spots is a key thing because we all have them.
Oh, yeah.
And having people within our organization that feel comfortable enough addressing the blind spots and giving the feedback is something that doesn't always happen. And so how do you create that environment is always something that's, truly important, is, being able to point out blind spots with people you work with or people that you have the privilege to lead and to serve, that they have the ability to come back and share with you your blind spots. It's that's a term, Brad, I'm glad you brought up, because blind spots is something we all have, and we all need sensors in our lives to point those out, like we do on our cars, to tell us if there's a car, in our blind spot. So
absolutely, yeah. So then with that came a big, culture change too, moving to a place that you hadn't lived in for a while. What was the transition to Green Bay like for you, and moving a family here? That creates a lot of different conversations that have to be had too. What was that like?
Yeah, it was. I'll tell you. So I have 4 children, and at the time, my oldest was going into 7th grade. My second oldest, he was going into 5th grade. And being from Detroit, what my wife and I thought was, we're moving to Green Bay. We're joining the Packers. Here's how we're gonna present this idea to our older 2 boys. We decided to get them each Packer hats. And so I can remember, Brad, like it was yesterday. My kids are sitting in the kitchen, and my wife and I have this bag, and in the bag are these 2 Packer baseball hats. And we, as we are explaining to the kids where we're going and why we're going there, we present the hats to the boys. My oldest is Max, and my second oldest is Caden, and they're now 17 and 15, right? But at the time, they're about 11 and 9. And my son Caden takes the hat after we present it to him. He looks at it, and he slams it on the ground like a manager at a baseball game who's upset with the ump. And I will tell you, at this point, Caden loves it here. My family loves it here. But that was an experience for my kids, in particular my older two. That wasn't necessarily easy. I'd be lying if I said it was as smooth as it gets. Mm-hmm. But what I will tell you is, once we moved out here, and it was July of 2019, it's been just a great experience. I mean, the people here, the schools our kids attend, the community at large it's just such a great place. And I'll tell you what I don't miss about Detroit is the traffic. And I'm reminded of that when I travel through Milwaukee or Chicago, but we certainly have a lot of family friends in the Detroit area that we go back frequently to visit and see. But, this has been a great place. And like I said, my kids have really transitioned. My older two are in high school, and I have two more that are in 6th grade and 5th grade. And it's just been a really good experience. They've got a lot of nice friends, and you know how important that is when you're young to have a good friend circle. And they both have that. And my wife is really pleasantly happy with the area too. So all around, it's been a great success for sure.
Yeah, that's a different kind of leadership that takes place there, because there's very few 7th graders throughout the country that would want to pick up and move what they've known since they were in existence, So
true. And I'm really proud of the kids, because when we moved, you all remember 2019 in July, fast forward, have another 9 months, and then, things changed. And they had to, have school at home and all that. And so I just, a lot of pride in the kids and the family for how they responded to that, like everybody in this community. And so it'll definitely be something they'll never forget, of course. But, I think they're stronger for it, and just, really proud of how they've handled it.
Yeah. Did that, I'm sure it did, but how does that impact your consideration when that phone rings to make that move? You have to have the foresight to know that, okay, with, through adversity often comes growth. It might be something you don't want to do now, but find the gifts in what happened, and then it'll, wind up being a gift for you. But at the same time, actually, Dan and I were having a conversation earlier about how difficult it would be to move up the ranks as to like a professional coaching level in something, because of that scenario. Like, the stability maybe isn't almost always there. 3 years, you get an opportunity at, you're coaching D2 and you get a D1 job. You're taking it. You're going. How does that play into that? And do you remember that going through your mind about, like, how'd you weigh that and decide to make that decision?
Yeah, I think I had to really anchor back to my belief system. And it was really, what's most important to me. Ultimately, it's my family, my wife, my kids. Is this going to be the best decision for them, A? And then B, from a career standpoint, will this help me in a way that could, diversify my experiences? Mm-hmm. And I think it checked those boxes. I really do. And I think as a family, we've become closer, more tight. And then from a professional standpoint, it definitely got me out of my comfort zone.
You certainly diversified.
Yeah, and I think we all can agree that growth can happen at exponential rate when you're outside your comfort zone, which I certainly was. And so I just think it's made me a better person. I think hopefully it's made me a better father and a husband. And just I think you can learn a lot through adversity and through change. And I think that's been something that we all as a family have, I think, gone through and appreciated.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. That's awesome, man. I'm glad to hear that it landed well and it went as smoothly as possible. We've got some family members that are considering a cross-country move right now, and they have this year, I believe she was a 7th grader going into 8th grade, and the move didn't happen this year, but it sounds like it's going to happen next year, and they're fighting they're having the same conversation that you were having about she does not want to leave, I don't think, and it's life's a wild ride, man. That's all you can say about that. But you put it pretty plainly earlier that there's nothing better than being a dad, man. And I don't think there is, with the good decisions, the hard decisions, the ones that maybe you made the wrong decision, it all comes together to make it valuable and make you feel it,
Absolutely. Yeah. There are moments, having a 17-year-old who's a senior, and Dan's got a senior as well. It's, you wish you could almost freeze time. And it's a good reminder for me and for us as parents just to make the most of the moments we have, because they do go by fast, and you just hope as a parent you provide enough for them when they're off on their own. They make the right decisions, and they believe in themselves, and if they make mistakes, they know that that we were there to help pick them up and be there in their corner, no matter what. And so, yeah, I said it earlier. Yeah, there's nothing better than being a dad, and it's I'm very fortunate. My wife and I are to have 4 healthy kids who are, for the most part, making the right decisions. So that's good.
Yeah, for the most part. That caveat
always have to
forever.
have that. Yeah,
absolutely, man. So what did that 5 years with the Packers entail? What? I guess let me put it this way: what happened that you expected, and what happened that was so far out of left field that you wouldn't have seen it coming?
Yeah, I would say for me, what I expected was to really learn a lot and be pushed in a unique way, because it was a completely different career move. That was something that was really unique. And again, talk about like being out of your comfort zone. I think that was something that really benefited me. And I would say the other part is like the organization. I had heard a lot about what a great culture it was, but it's not really until you get in the organization, you kind of get behind the curtain and you realize this place is special. And I never took for granted that. Like every day when I pulled into Lambeau and parked, I just never lost sight of that. And I just think it was just so neat when I would walk in or walk out and you'd have fans that are standing there taking pictures or selfies. And one of the greatest things I had as a professional there was the ability to say, hey, can I take a picture for you? And so it was just really neat because you're a part of that. And I had a lot of great experience of being with a lot of the clients that I worked with, that a big part of my job was showing them through Lambeau Field. And, Brad, I'll tell you an example that just really still to this day stands out. I was taking a client through one of our event spaces up on the 4th floor, and we're viewing the stadium from the suite, from the box, looking out on the field. And I'm chatting, and then I look over, and all of a sudden, the client starts tearing up. And I realized this is different. And I said, "Are you okay?" And he said, "Yeah." And he kind of chokes up, and he goes in to tell about the seats where he sat at as a child with his family and how many memories he's had through that. And that evoke of emotion. And so like there's moments like that I had all the time where people share their stories or their grandparents' seats and how those seats got transferred down. And just, so I always knew that the Packers were a special organization, but it wasn't until I really started working there that I saw it firsthand. And, the mission of the organization is to win championships. But number 2, it's to provide excellent guest experiences. And so it was really unique, really special to be a part of that portion of the mission, because there was just so many opportunities that we could have moments with people, with guests, that turned into memories. And anytime you can be in the memory-making business, it's a special thing. And then I think, the other thing I'll say is just, you see people like Mark Murphy, you see people like Ed Policy or Gabrielle Dow, and some of these really like prolific leaders, and then you get a chance to work with them, and then you see the greatness in person. And I just have a sincere amount of respect and appreciation for them. And then you get around some of the board members, and the board members who just have this high level of pride for the organization. And so, the great thing about the organization is like everybody cares, from the person who works in facilities who's picking up the garbage outside, to the folks in atrium operations who are setting up the linens, to our catering partner, Delaware North, who execute these incredible events, to the folks who are our Hall of Fame and stadium tour guides, and the folks who work in it's just countless people, security, and like the electricians, like people who work in sales. It's just the amount of people that just really believe and love the G and represent it in a great way is just something that I just feel incredibly fortunate to be a part of. And, it's a part of my story, and one that I feel like has been a great chapter in my story. And, I think part of that too has been neat as my kids being able to experience it as well. And so, in the end, it's all about them. And so it's been great. So those 5 years are something that I'll never forget. It's certainly cherished, and I'm a different person and better person because of it, for sure.
Yeah, that's awesome to hear, man. I actually saw recently, I think it was on LinkedIn, I saw it. There was it was funny because it was just called Painter. Like there was a painter for the Packers posted a job. And I'm sitting there thinking how cool it would be to go through that interview process? Because you know there were a ton of applicants to be the painter for the Green Bay Packers. But hearing you talk about the mission behind closed doors, you know, thinking about how that interview process would play out is what I looked at when I saw that job. I'm like, I wonder who ends up to get to be the painter for the Packers. It's not going to be because you go in there and say that you're the best painter because you've done it for 20 years. Like maybe you are and maybe it is, but it's going to be something else that lands that person that gig, you know? That's funny. But then, yeah, to hear about how it flows throughout the organization. We had Bill Jartz on a few weeks ago, and he's recently on the board, you know? Yep. And it was funny because most of our conversation, Bill's a really humble guy, and he was talking about how he has no idea why he's in this room with all of these business executives making all this money, and he's just a humble reporter from Green Bay. And I'm like, Bill, man, you represent what Green Bay Packers are, you know, like that. That's why you're in the room, man. He
does. And if I could just share with you, Brad, like, you know, working in events, he was a part of so many fundraising galas, like from an auctioneer standpoint, and Jartsy did it better than anybody. I think about the amount of money that he's raised and all the galas that he's been a part of, and he's got this baseball card. I don't know if he's ever talked about this, but he'll add a nail into the auction just so to. I mean, he's so charismatic, and he does it for all the right reasons. And I just think about someone like Jartsy. He's like a great example of what Green Bay is all about, and him being a part of the organization. When people hear his voice over the airwaves in Lambeau, it just makes things even more special. So, you always knew if he was being the auctioneer, that there was going to be a lot of money raised in those galas because no one's better than him.
We learned about that from a friend of mine, Steve Brenzel, had him on the show. He used to host a TV show in Green Bay for a long time, and he talks about the money raised. It's funny, I just learned when we had Bill on, though, I learned about the Jartsy moniker. I didn't know that people call him Jartsy, but then you probably know this from being internal. I didn't know that when he gets real exuberant and jacked up, they say, give him a Jartsy. Like, that's what they tell him. Like, when he gets on the mic and really cracks one, it's called giving him a Jartsy. I thought that was really cool to learn,
man. Well, and it works, too. Like, give him a Jartsy, it works. He's got the magic touch, for sure.
He does.
Yeah.
But, yeah, man, that's, you know, it's what we all feel. I mean, the Packers are more than football to the Green Bay community. They are the Green Bay community in some instances, in a lot of instances, right? So it's awesome to hear that, you know, after a 5-year experience, that's a career move, turns into that for you. And probably most that walk through those doors. One question about that. You're a pretty put together guy. You know, said you played some college football. Did anybody ever mistake you for a player walking around the building?
No. I was too old and bald. But I will tell you one quick story, though. Very different than football. But we had an event with UWGB, and I was checking in on the event. I'll never forget this. And it was over on the Miller Lite deck. And I'm walking through there, and it's about, 300-400 students. So it's right when the students are starting at UWGB, and as part of that, they have this experience at Lambeau Field, right? Makes sense. You have kids from all over who are probably heard of the Packers, or going to UWGB. And so I'm walking through there to check in on the event, and I have a student approach me, and she says, "Excuse me, are you the chancellor?" And I stopped for a second thinking, oh, this could be good. I'm like, I'm sorry, I'm not. So I've been mistaken for a chancellor, but not a Packer player, but no.
In an alternative or like a parallel universe, possibly Chancellor was on your original path.
Could have been. I mean, I've been around a lot of education environments for sure, but not quite to the level of a Chancellor, no.
So the Chancellor and not middle linebacker, got it.
Correct.
Got it. Well, that's awesome. And now your next career move just happened, recently? 8 months ago, 6 months ago, something like that?
July. Yep, July 1st, yeah.
So I had a chance, like a lot of people in Northeast Wisconsin and Wisconsin in general. I saw Steve do the Twin Thieves at Manufacturing First, I think is where I saw him. And one of the better keynotes I've seen in my life. Awesome just delivery and really methodology behind it. So what leads to that jump? I'm thinking we're getting a picture of it already. You talked about leadership quite a bit up until now, but what leads to this transition that you're embarking on now?
So you mentioned the Twin Thieves, and that's the book that Steve and Lucas co-authored. So Lucas Jadin is Steve Jones's business partner. They founded Jadin-Jones, and I had read the book at this point now probably 3 years ago, and I was immediately impacted by it. There was just so many aspects of the book that resonated with me, and whether it was on leadership or culture, and so I found that they were speaking at St. Norbert. So I'd read the book, but then found they were speaking, doing a little workshop at St. Norbert as part of the Center for Exceptional Leadership. And so I said, I got to go meet these guys. I got to go see them in person. And so I went there, listened to them both speak, introduced myself after, and from that experience, there was just more opportunities to connect with them. And then over time, we built a relationship, a friendship, went through some of their training. And then I just realized like what they're doing is different. I had been a part of a lot of different professional development, a lot of personal learning experiences. But then what I quickly realized is they have just a high level of humility, but also a high level of influence to create influence and impact that I'd never seen before. And I just talk about two individuals that I just am really fortunate to be a part of their organization. And so I got to know them, as I said, for a couple of years. And then most recently, they asked me to join them. And it was not an easy decision, of course, because I was, as I already shared, really appreciative and enjoyed the Packer organization. But back to my background of being in education and just what I really enjoyed doing, I decided that this was the best fit for me. And ultimately, the reason or the why is that through my work with the company now, I really feel I can be the best version of myself because I'm able to serve to the degree that I'd like to, whether that's with other leaders, with organizations, with schools. And so just really grateful. I've been with them for about 4 or 5 months now, and it's been a really good experience. And you won't find two better influencer leaders than Lucas and Steve when it comes to having impact and giving people that competitive edge that they're all looking for.
Yeah. So it's almost it's funny that we talked about earlier. It's kind of, I guess, written that we talked about kind of what expanding leadership looks like and how that impact changes. And it's almost like a next step in that of ladder of influence, because now it went from that 100 students to the 400, faculty members, employees, whatever it was. Now to organization after organization, it's almost exponential, the places you can touch. Is that how it feels?
It does. And what's great about our company is we're really able to reach and support people from across the country. So we have a lot of different modalities, a lot of different ways of providing leadership support, providing skills and coaching through in-person workshops, through keynote presentations. But we also have a whole nother arm of our business where we are providing virtual training sessions. And so we have folks from across the country.
Like one-to-one type deals?
One-to-one executive coaching. And then we also do large group training sessions. So we do what we call our Next Level Leadership Academy, where we have current or aspiring leaders from all industries across the country that meet weekly to go through leadership concepts, mindset concepts, productivity concepts. So helping to build their skills as a leader, and we can get to them, from all over, which is the nice thing about virtual support is, everybody can tune in, and if for some reason they can't, because everybody's got busy lives, we record the sessions and then get them to them at a later time so they can, ultimately watch the concepts. And
it's certainly made life more flexible. There's no doubt about that. It's funny. I had a date scheduled with Steve to be on the show, and then he thought it was going to be virtual and didn't know. So I only record in person. I think there's an element of this podcast that needs to be in person. So we didn't end up matching up, but it's funny because that same virtualness does lead to the ability to easily connect on a similar level and provide a similar type service, I think.
Yeah, and that's what we really try to do is, so we have kind of three parts of our business. It's the curriculum, it's it's the coaching, and then the community. And what we've really found, even in a virtual setting, that we're really able to foster community within the learners that are part of our virtual sessions. So we really encourage, and we've found success in people who have met and networked in our sessions, who organically then reach out to each other afterwards to really just create their own connection, their own relationship, and learning from each other, which is really what it's about. It's from a leadership standpoint, how can you help and influence and empower others? But then if they're able to spread it out to other people, that's where the beauty is too. And so it's our job as leaders to help create that environment in a virtual setting. And we've found some great success in that community side of things. And, it takes the right person to do that, to be willing, to be vulnerable, and to get outside his or her comfort zone. But we found great success in being able to do that in that virtual way. And when we are able to get in person, you could just see the connection like magnified, because there's nothing better than this, what we're doing right now, the face-to-face. Truly.
Yeah. It's funny, man. The concept of leadership is something that really resonates with me. You made the joke earlier that you have more debt, but you're not any more knowledgeable or whatever. So undergrad and masters are both leadership focused. I can't even remember the names of them right now, but leadership is in the word, right? And somebody walks up to me today and says, "Give me the definition of leadership." It's like, well, that's a loaded question, man. Like, am I going to, you can rattle off persuade others, whatever, blah, 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 motivate others to be their best selves, whatever it could be. But like, something about leadership coaching is so nebulous that it's hard to like put it into action sometimes. And, what is that like? Because up until this point in your career, it's been doing the act of leading. Mm-hmm. Now it's training others to do the act of leading in this nebulous way. That has to be part of those growing pains, right? Or like learning.
Absolutely. And I'll tell you, we actually learn a lot from our clients, and we're able to use that as part of our content, as part of how we can support other leaders. But we look at leadership from a blueprint that we have, and it kind of that low level is lead self, and so that what a lot of people say is lead by example. And then we believe the next tier, the greater tier, is when you lead others. And then the ultimate form of leadership, we believe, is servant leadership. It's not subservient, it's servant leadership. So when we think about who are the best leaders in our lives, if we were to poll a group of, let's say, 100 people, many times they'll say their parents, or they might say their coaches or certain teachers. And then we kind of ask why. And then we break it down. What we really have found is those individuals, whether it's their mom and their dad, a high school coach, a college professor, they cared so much about that person that they wouldn't let them fail, that they served them in a certain way, that they knew that if they fell, that they would be the one to help get them up. And so to us, servant leadership is the highest form. So what we're trying to empower others is, how can you serve others in a way that's different than just, leading by example or leading others. It's looking at it from a flip standpoint, where you're actually serving the people that you have the privilege to lead, versus the opposite. Well, you work for me, so you need to do everything to make my job easier. The best leaders do it the other way. Mm-hmm. Best leaders create conditions for people that they have the privilege to lead to be as successful as possible. Mm-hmm. They have high levels of humility. They have high levels of support and candor. And there are times where they need to be tough, right, and give good feedback, and they need to give clear feedback. But the others know it's layered with a level of care and of candor. So that's how we kind of look at leadership. That's how we define it, through that triangle, that blueprint. Leading self, leading others are important, but the highest degree is the servant leadership. And again, kind of the example that we know of best is when we think about who's the best servant in our lives. Oftentimes it's our parents, or it's people who are the most influential. And when you break that down, what was it about them? And that makes a lot of sense to people, because if they know what great leadership is, then they in turn can, dispel it on their self to others. And that's ultimately what we're trying to do with the people that we work with.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's probably few parallel motivators than knowing than wanting to achieve something for someone you know who cares about you. That's it. It boils down to a pretty, as nebulous as leadership is, that concept is pretty easy to see, right? Like if you think about everything you do in your life, if it's for someone that you know cares about you, you're probably going to take it to the next level. If it's not, similar to being a teacher,
Absolutely. And, people could tell pretty quickly if someone cares about you.
Oh yeah.
And we use this all the time in schools and now in our work in businesses. And, people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So if we can create care first, everything else will take care of itself. And, a big part of care is trust too. When we think about what are two big things that leaders have, it's high levels of care with a significant amount of trust. And it's the leaders trusting their people and the people trusting them. And, when we hear from a lot of different leaders, that's something that we hear is a big struggle oftentimes is building trust. And so we have a whole rubric on trust that we believe heavily in that's kind of shaped on authentic vulnerability, care, credibility, and being consistent. So those are kind of the four big parts of how we help build trust. And we have a pretty elaborate survey that our leaders take on themselves under those four key tenets. Again, care, credibility, authentic vulnerability, and then consistency. And then we encourage them to have their folks who they lead fill out the survey as well. And it's pretty neat to see what they think of themselves and then what their the folks they work with, what they think of them as a leader. So, those who are great take in that feedback from the people they have the privilege to lead and look to make change. And it's pretty neat.
And then they both get to peruse the opposite sides responses. That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's pretty solid. 4 months in the game, man. You got it down to a T. You've been a student of the game.
This is really impactful work, and I believe in it. And I will just tell you, I was quote unquote selling this before I was with Jadin-Jones. And I could tell, Brad, you're a leader, you're a learner, and you love to read. And so I love to read, and so when you get around people like us, I often was asked, Pat, what are you reading, or what's a really good book? The Twin Thieves was the one I was recommending all the time, and to the point where my wife was like opening the Amazon and being like, "Really, another Twin Thieves?" This is even before I was working for the company, right? Because I just, some people love to buy people cups of coffee. I love to buy people books, and the Twin Thieves is one I've bought more than a dozen times for people because, when they read it and they experience it, I know it's going to resonate with them, and if I can have a small part in that, and so this is work that I just really find to be impactful, and it's easy to promote because I think it's had a great impact on so many people in a short period of time. And the company's only been in existence for about 2-3 years now, and we've really been able to see some significant progress in people and organizations, and that's fun to be a part of.
Yeah, absolutely. So one thing I've wondered since I saw that first keynote, and maybe you don't even know, it's kind of secondary, but it was the Twin Thieves concept something Steve was using when he was having all that success as a high school coach?
Yeah, so he coined it. He came up with it. And so those of you who don't know, the Twin Thieves is the fear of failure and the fear of judgment. And the idea behind it is often the fear of failure and the fear of judgment, they're looked at as twins because they look the same, but they're actually really different. And they're coined as thieves because we believe they rob people of success. And so we asked this survey question with a lot of people, what's the toughest mental challenge you're experiencing? And what it often comes down to is fear. But when you really break it down even deeper, it's not as much the fear, it's the fear of the judgment that comes from it. Mm-hmm. So we've really tried to hone in on that, the judgment side of things, as far as why that is getting in people's way. And so we all have what we deem the little person voice in our head, or the inner critic. And that's the voice that's telling us we're not good enough, we don't deserve this, you're going to screw up. And so we really help build skill around that. That's part of our mental skills side of things, to help realize that little person is there. And we all know what it's like when that voice is in our head telling us something that we're not good enough, or we're going to fail at this, or you don't deserve this job. Often people talk about the imposter syndrome. So we really try to empower people to use that big person voice to say the opposite. Oh, I am good enough. I'm going to do well. I'm going to take this risk, and if it doesn't go well, it was a good rep. And so we realize that little person voice isn't going away. Sometimes it's in the passenger seat, but we just don't want it driving us. So there's other times we got to get it in the trunk, but sometimes it seeps up. And we believe if you can name it, you can tame it. And that's where the naming of the Twin Thieves came into play, because the fear of failure and the fear of judgment are something that we've seen has really had an impact on people. And so we try to build skill around that to help people combat the Twin Thieves and create opportunities to bulletproof against it, because it's in all of us. And that's the neat thing when we talk to leaders, whether it's successful professional coaches at professional levels, or teachers or superintendents or CEOs or presidents, they all have it. They all have the little person voice.
Everybody,
yeah. And so the Twin Thieves is something, that Steve coined, and then both him and Lucas just put together a masterpiece. I mean, it's a best-selling book, and we're actually excited to note that it's now an audiobook as of this week.
Saw that, yeah.
Yeah, so that's a big deal for us, because now we just have a way to get to other audiences. There's a lot of people that prefer audiobook because of how they travel, or because they just prefer that in the audio version over the print. So just having it in another format on various platforms is a really great thing to get the word out.
Yeah, for sure. That's what so many do. That's why I listen to so many podcasts. I like podcasting when I'm driving, and it kills a lot of time, But do you know specifically, did he do that? Well, was that part of his practice as a high school coach? Because I think that message, if it was, that's such a more relatable way to explain something that not everybody, a lot of people kind of know, but don't know how to name it. Like you were saying earlier, telling a sophomore, junior in high school that these Twin Thieves are there and they exist, and here's how you can combat that is super powerful. Was he using it at that time?
He was. So the really unique thing, and I give Kimberly schools a lot of credit because it's not everywhere, but the unique thing is for 10 years, Steve taught leadership classes at Kimberly. And so,
which is awesome,
which is incredible. And what was great is he was teaching these type of concepts in the classroom and then trying them out, using them on the football field in a very unpredictable environment like football is. And so incorporating them in the classroom, exploring and incorporating them into the football field and finding out, do they actually work or not? And so he was really able to refine a lot of great leadership concepts and tenets, again, in a very unpredictable way through the game of football. And so a lot of what you read in the Twin Thieves, or we see in the Twin Thieves, are part of the principles that Steve taught in his classroom. And then, of course, Lucas has embedded a lot of his work into that book as well. He wrote a previous book called Win in the Dark, which is an outstanding book. And that whole idea of putting in the work in the dark. So when the bright lights are on, it's your time to shine. And so, the whole idea, if you cheat in the dark, you're going to get exposed. You're going to get shown under the lights. And we use that a lot with athletes because behind the scenes and working in the dark, that will get shown when it's your time to perform. And so both those two have just really, over time, built a lot of great concepts that they've tried and really adapted to put together in that book. And so, Steve's experience with Kimberly was incredible. And I would just say, as someone who's been around football for a long time, I think what he was able to create from a culture standpoint, with great coaches and great players, of course, that he'll credit, and he always says it's a we and not a me thing. I think that was a real big reason why they won 70 straight games and 5 straight state titles and 129-9. What I always also find really unique and special about it is it was in a closed district. So students couldn't move, students couldn't come from other cities to play at Kimberly High School. You had to you had to live in the Kimberly area school district in order to play there. Whereas, there's other areas, not necessarily as much specific in Wisconsin, but other areas across the nation where you can live in one town and play at another school. You couldn't necessarily do that at Kimberly. So everybody that lived there, resided there, was going through that process. And just, I think what he was able to create, and obviously Kimberly's still having great success, I think is heavily due to, the culture he created and a lot of the concepts like the Twin Thieves that, he was able to really incorporate into that program at a high level.
Yeah. I just remember the first time I heard that, thinking about how much clearer that would be for a 16-year-old than some of the things that we've all seen and experienced throughout our lives about what leadership looks like and how to motivate someone to be their best self. It's just and of course that success is translating to adults, because it puts it into, I don't know if you even call it perspective, but it puts it into such an understandable way that makes you want to act in accordance with something that would be better for yourself. You know what I mean?
I do. And I'll share a quick story with you, Brad. My oldest son, he plays baseball and he plays football. And there's a school, St. Mary's in Winona, Minnesota, that has had some interest in him to go and play. And so we went out there about a month ago and took a visit on a Saturday. And it just so happens that one of the players on that baseball team went to Kimberly High School. His name is Cam. And when my wife and my son were sitting with the head baseball coach for St. Mary's, he brought up this particular player, Cam. And he said, we really value incoming freshmen. And he said, I'll give you an example. One of our players, Cam, spoke about this in front of all of the incoming freshmen. And he said, the example he gave is, we don't have any special group chats. Everybody's invited to everything. And he said, Cam sets the tone, and immediately all those incoming freshmen, and it could be you, Max, if you come here next year, he's speaking to my son, will be a part of this. And he said, that simple message really permeated through the locker room, and guys don't feel like there's all these cliques, and it takes someone like that, a student or player-led voice, to create that. And so I thought that was really profound, because I knew that Cam went to Kimberly. So after the practice that we had a chance to watch, I said hello to Cam, and I kind of pulled him aside. I said, Cam, I got to tell you, I said, Coach brought you up. He's like, and his eyes get wide. He said, really? I said, yeah. I said, my wife and I and Max were sitting with him, and, he brought up you as far as, making sure everybody knew they were invited to anything that you guys are doing as a baseball program. And there's no cliques and there's no special group chats. And I said, I just thought that was really cool. And I said, I know you went to Kimberly, and I know Coach Jones really well. I actually work with Coach Jones now. And he stopped me and he said, everything I know about leadership, I learned from Coach Jones, because I took all of his leadership classes. And so you think about what Steve has done over time and that compounding effect. I get goosebumps thinking about it, Brad, because, it's that example of, teaching kids when they're at the tender age of high school, so that when they go off and they become young adults or they become adults, they can then influence others. And it was a personal example because, I'm now working with Steve and Lucas, and then you see someone who now has an impact or an influence on my own son is just super profound. And it's, I just also think it's important for us as leaders. You just never know what type of impact we'll have on others that could be compounding, to the greater community. And so Cam's a great example of that, and he's doing great things over at St. Mary's, and I'm his biggest fan. Whether my son goes there or not, I know he's going to be successful because of who he is and how he carries himself and what type of leader he is. And so just a great example of someone who took in a lot of these principles and is carrying it with him throughout.
Well, and you can see where it lives in foundational theory, because doing that in itself shows that you care about everybody. The first step to building the trust you were talking about, like you matter enough that you're going to get every single word that everybody gets. And it doesn't matter if you're a freshman or a fifth year. Well, these days with COVID and everything, it could be a 7th year senior, like there's people who still have a lot of eligibility, and it doesn't matter who you are. Like that, just that concept shows that he's learned the value of including everyone to build trust. It's foundational, man. But at the same point, it's so not, because so many people don't do it. It's crazy.
Yeah. And we talk a lot about, there are things in this world from a leadership or culture standpoint that might be viewed simple, but they're not easy. And, we talked a little bit before about the action and just things that we know, whether it's through reading or through listening to podcasts, because we're in a world where there's a lot of consumption, right? We can get we can get any book we want anywhere. We can go onto YouTube to find out so much, or we can listen to podcasts. But we have a formula that we really believe in, and it's K minus A equals 0. K minus A equals 0. K stands for knowledge. A stands for action. 0 stands for nothing. So with all this knowledge we have, if we don't act on it, nothing's going to change. Nothing's going to happen. And so we really try to build skill around that A, that action. And so we live in a knowledge-consuming environment. So how do we help leaders have the skill to create the action, to change the behavior, to create the culture that we're looking for? And so that's a formula that we believe in wholeheartedly, and it's stuck with a lot of people because that A is really what leadership's about. Because simple isn't always easy. And so how do you do the action? How do you do the work? Because that's the toughest part. We may know how to do it, but if we don't do it, then nothing's going to change. So.
Yeah. Well, how many conferences or being in education in services have you gone to where there might be some great content there, but there's 90% of the crowd sitting with no pen, no notes, nothing, just listening? How much of that turns into action? Very little.
Correct.
You know?
Correct. I think of it this way, Brad. You go to a workshop, let's say it's 3 hours. What's hour 4?
Yeah.
Right? What are you doing in hour 4?
Mm-hmm.
Because hours 1, 2, 3, you're getting that content, but then what are you doing in hour 4? Or what are you doing the next day? Or when you get back to your laptop and you have all those emails, how do you operationalize taking care of those emails and then putting into action all the things that or nuggets you took from those 3 hours? And so that's where we try to come into play, is creating sustainability and consistency with the skills that we coach and we teach. Because it's about action. It's about sustaining and doing the simple things really well. We believe in the fundamentals, the blocking and tackling, and just doing it at a high level with high levels of consistency.
Yeah. Well, like that win in the dark thing you said earlier with Lucas, that reminds me, I'm trying to remember who the player is right now. It may have been a Ray Lewis clip. I can't remember, but it was someone in an NFL practice. Saw a clip recently where they said, we didn't have to come inside today because it was raining outside. And this person, amidst a bunch of NFL players, which are all at the top tier of athlete in the world, one of them is saying, we didn't have to come in today. This is supposed to be hard, so the game is easy. And that was really poignant and like kind of I think of Kobe when I think of that, like that athletic mindset of, okay, even when it doesn't quote unquote mean anything, you want it to be hard because you know that's going to make it easier coming forward. Even that is action that a lot of people aren't thinking about, that if you put in the reps inside, outside, well, I'm just more comfortable today, but maybe it rains later and we'll deal with that then. Yeah. I don't know, man. That's just a different way of thinking about it.
It is. And I love that you brought up Kobe, because Kobe has, what an incredible competitor. But you talk about a guy who won in the dark, and there's a story of a basketball trainer who wanted to know what the secret was behind Kobe. And so he asked Kobe, can I watch you train? And Kobe said, sure. And if you know anything about the Mamba mentality or Kobe, he was an early riser. And so Kobe said, sure, you can come watch me. And so as the story goes, Kobe said, my workout's at 3:30 a.m. And so this particular gentleman who wanted to watch Kobe train showed up at 3 o'clock in the morning, thinking he'd get there early to kind of impress Kobe. And he walks in the gym and he hears the squeaking of the shoes. And he walks in, it's Kobe. And Kobe was warming up. So he was warming up for the actual workout that started at 3:30. And then at 3:30, the workout started. And the gentleman who, watched the workout said, I was sitting there for 45 minutes and I became bored, because the drills that Kobe was doing were the same drills that you would see like a fifth grader doing, like the Mikan drill and these real basic dribbling drills. And the guy who was watching him said he almost fell asleep. And so he went up to Kobe and said, Kobe, you're doing these like super basic drills. He's like, what else are you going to be doing? And Kobe stopped him and said, don't you realize why I'm so great? He says, because I never got bored with the basics. That's why. And, the rest is just history as far as Kobe. I mean, what an incredible player he was and leader. And so, bringing up Kobe is a great one because you think about a guy who won in the dark and really relied on the fundamentals. And, it's just one of our stories that we love sharing because he did it so well and at such a high level.
Yeah. A lot of it's the obsession. It's the obsession, not with we all end up doing things we enjoy. Hopefully you end up, at least even if it's not your career in life, most of us end up doing something we enjoy or becoming really enthralled or entranced by something. But with people like that, with the Kobe, the Tiger, the people that transcend everything, it's the obsession with the process to achieve the end goal. And I mean, I bet there's so many people out there that aren't comfortable behind a mic that have that story about Kobe, like the dude who cleans the gym that Kobe worked out at. Like, he's probably got some stories for days, And it's the obsession with that process or putting the action you were talking about. A lot of people have the knowledge. The action is further and fewer between.
Yeah, there's the term, trust the process. And we kind of extend on that, and we use the verbiage, aggressive in the process, patient in the outcome. So we want to be super aggressive in our day-to-days, our blocking, our tackling, our fundamentals, and we want to be obsessive about it. We want to get those down, but we want to have some patience in the outcome because the outcome may not happen as quick as we expect it to be. We're in a microwavable society. We're not, an Amazon society where we want things right away. Yeah. And so because of that, sometimes our process isn't done to the level it should be because we want results instantly. And so we talk a lot about being aggressive in our process, but patient in the outcome. Like Kobe. Kobe was a great example of that. Like, he did the work when no one was watching, time and time again, with significant consistency, and the results and the outcome showed because he was aggressive in the process and patient in the outcome.
I'm going to take that, just so you know, the microwave society. I like that a lot. Well, Pat, I appreciate you coming on, man. It was nice chatting with you further. I'm glad we got to extend our conversation. I knew it was going to be enjoyable. We talked for maybe 10 minutes that day, but I knew our paths would cross again eventually, and I'm glad it finally happened. So thanks for taking the time, man.
Well, I appreciate you having me on, Brad. Appreciate the work you're doing for NWTC and for Rooted Wisconsin and just the greater Green Bay area, because it is the good work, and you're spreading the good word of everybody in this community. So thanks for who you are and what you do.
Appreciate you, man.